Shabbat Shalom. It is nice to see you here, and it is nice to know that there are some of you out there watching us. And it is especially nice to be here on this Shabbat of Lech Lecha, the Shabbat that in certain ways launches the Jewish story. And I think it's important for us to understand this Shabbat, this moment of Lech Lecha, the moment of the beginning of the Jewish journey, the moment of the seed, if you like, of the Jewish story and the Jewish journey. And our sages understand it in context. They understand it against the backdrop of what has come before. The commentators and sages of Israel look at the story of Abraham, look at the story of Lech Lecha, and think of it in the context of other stories of remarkable humanity and of righteousness. And especially they compare Noah, whom we read about last week, and Abram, whom we read about this week. With regard to Noah, if you recall, and you know, these words reverberate for us in our minds, chapter 6 of the book of Genesis, the very beginning of the Torah portion of Noah, starts with Noach ish tzadik tamim haya bedorotav. Noah was a righteous and tamim, whole person in his generations. And then et ha'elohim hithalech Noach. With God, Noah walked, and the word walked here, hithalech, I'm going to focus on in a moment, but I'll just note right now it's a reflexive word. It's not just walked, it's Noah walked for himself, with himself, somehow with God. But the very beginning of the Torah portion of Noah speaks of Noah not only as a tzaddik, as a righteous person, but as a tamim, as a whole person. The rabbis look at this and try to think, well, what does it mean? What does the word tamim here mean? Tamim is generally not used with regard to people. It's generally used with regard to sacrifices. And generally the sacrifice that is thought of as tamim is the lamb or the goat or the kid that is tamim. In other words, that is without blemish. The tamim is not so much the righteous person who acts righteously in the world. The rabbis teach us the tamim is a person or the thing that is without blemish, without flaw, that has not had the time or the experience of being somehow blemished, or somehow scratched, or somehow injured, or somehow flawed. The notion of Noah as an ish tzaddik tamim, as a person who is righteous and whole, is a person not so much of Noah in terms of Noah's action, but in terms of what Noah had not experienced. In fact, throughout the Torah portion, Noah is a kind of outlier. He is marginal to humanity. All of the generation of Noah were sinners. They were people who engaged in terrible oppression, in all kinds of horrific practices. Noah would not. Noah is understood to be the person who was a tamim, in other words, who was whole in the context of a generation of sinners. Here we have a really interesting notion of what righteousness means. The rabbis go as far as to explain Noah and the righteousness of Noah in the context of commandments that are negative. Thou shalt not. The righteousness of Noah was the righteousness of the person who enables him or herself to not engage in practices that are sinful practices. The person who does not kill, the person who does not steal, the person who does not bear false witness, the person who does not. That is the kind of righteousness we're talking about with regard to Noah. When Noah walks with God. Noah walks, hitalech, it says here, et ha'Elohim hitalech Noach. The notion of Noah walking is not a notion of Noah walking the earth, but walking with God. And somehow walking in a reflexive way. The rabbis think about Noah as some kind of a mystic, a person who walks in the higher spheres. This notion of Noah as somehow a person who is not completely of this earth. Noah in itself means rest. In terms of the earthly life of Noah, Noah is a person who is associated with rest, with staying in place. The only walking, the only movement that Noah engages in is with God, is that movement in the higher spheres. And we see that, and the rabbis see that, in the context of the Noah portion. There are a number of places where there are signals of this that are evident. If you recall in chapter 7, right? Vayhi hamabul 40 yom vayirbu hamayim, right? Vayis'u et hateva, it says, vatarem me'al haaretz. The flood lasted 40 whole days. For 40 days, the earth flooded. And the earth rose, the waters rose and rose and rose above the earth. And they carried the ark above the earth, right? They carried the ark above the earth. And the ark was lifted above the earth. Imagine this ark kind of lifted above mountains, above, like hovering above the waters. Vayigberu hamayim vayirbu vatelech hateva al pnei hamayim, it says. And the waters grew, the mayim grew, and became taller and taller. And the ark, it says, walked. The ark walked on top of the water. The walking of Noah was with God. The walking of the ark was not on earth. It was somehow suspended between heaven and earth on top of the water. And then, chapter 8, at the end of the flood, Vayashuvu hamayim me'al haaretz, haloch vashov, the waters withdrew from the earth, they walked away and receded, vatanach hateva. The ark rested. When it met the earth, the ark rested. Noah never moved. On earth, Noah never moved. The only place Noah moved with was spiritually with God, and somehow the ark moved on the water. It walked on the water, suspended between heaven and earth. Back on earth, Noah never moves. Consider Abraham. Vayomer Elohim el Avram, lech lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladetcha u'mibeit avicha el haaretz asher ar'eka ve'escha legoy gadol va'avarechecha va'gadla shmecha ve'heye bracha. What is the first thing we learn about Abraham, the first commandment of the Jew? Go forth for yourself from your land, from the place of your birth, from the house of your parents, to the land that I will show you. Not walk around somewhere with God, hover between heaven and earth, where the ark is going to walk on water. I never saw that, by the way. I don't quite know how they managed it, the ark walking on water. But walk from one place to the other. Go on a journey. Lech lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladetcha u'mibeit avicha. An earthly travel. Not only an earthly travel that will mean some kind of spiritual journey, but go be a blessing to other nations. Go be a blessing to other people. Interact with other people. Not only a spiritual journey wherein we elevate ourselves, we somehow reach to a place wherein we are hanging between heaven and earth, but go to a place wherein you move the needle. You make change. You create progress. You bring blessing. An earthly journey. And a journey that says right from the very beginning, Lech lecha me, go from el haaretz asher ar'eka, and go to. The journey entails a leaving, a departure, as well as a destination. Leaving, departure from your land, from the house of your birth, from the house of your parents, from the place you know, into the unknown, into the unclear, into something that is not quite a reality yet, that hopefully will be a blessing. Suddenly, we're in the real world. And suddenly, we're in the real world of the journey. The great Oliver Goldsmith, in the year 1764, published a poem called The Traveler that was eventually published with the help of Dr. Johnson, and spoke about his journey. And I wonder whether Abram felt the same way about his journey, about leaving a sense of home, or perhaps the illusion of home. He wrote the following words: "Eternal blessings crown my earliest friend, and round his dwelling guardian saints attend. Blessed be that spot where cheerful guests retire to pause from toil and trim their evening fire. Blessed that abode where want and pain repair, and every stranger finds a ready chair. Blessed be those feasts where mirth and peace abound, where all the ruddy family around laugh at the jests or pranks that never fail, or sigh with pity at some mournful tale, or press the bashful stranger to his food and learn the luxury of doing good. But me not destined such delights to share, my prime of life in wandering spent and care, impelled with steps unceasing to pursue some fleeting good that mocks me with the view, that like the circle bounding earth and skies allures from far, yet as I follow flies, and find no spot of all the world my own." But then Abram is called not only to leave Ur-Kasdim, the place of his birth, but then to move the house of his father and mother in Haran and go off to a land that would never be his. Abram never finds home, travels through the land of Israel, from the land of Israel to Egypt because of a drought, to Gerar, to Beersheba, to be buried in Hebron. Perhaps at the very end of this poem by Oliver Goldsmith, The Traveler, I think Oliver Goldsmith offers us a prayer. And I'd like to imagine that it is Abram's prayer. It is the true prayer of the person journeying and not quite finding home. Here is what he writes. Vain, very vain, my weary search to find that bliss which only centers in the mind. Why have I strayed from pleasure and repose to seek a good each governance bestows? In every governance, though terror reign, though tyrant kings or tyrant rules restrain, how small of all that human hearts endure, that part which rules or rulers can cause or cure. Still to ourselves in every place consigned, our own felicity we make or find. With secret course which no loud storms annoy, glides the smooth current of domestic joy. The lifted axe, the agonizing wheel, Luke's iron crown, and Damien's bed of steel. To us remote from power, but rarely known, leave reason, faith, and conscience all our own. Amen be to that. This Shabbat and every Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.